Good evening. My name is Kate. Tonight we're going to be going over how to complete the FAFSA and the FAFSA process, and then some additional financial aid terms and things that you'll see along the way as you complete the FAFSA and start to receive financial aid. Then my name is Katie Kostis. I am the Director of Financial Aid. If you have any questions you want to reach out about, please feel free to give us a call at 716-286-8686. That's our main number. Or you can email us, either myself at kkostis@niagara.edu or fao@niagara.edu with any questions. First thing that you really have to do in order to really get the financial aid process kicked off is to complete the FAFSA form. So you can actually do this for seniors, for current seniors who are in high school. You can start to complete the 22-23 FAFSA that opens up October 1st. So just a few short weeks away, you can actually start completing this. I recommend having the FAFSA done by Thanksgiving. I mean, you can do after that or before, but pretty much as long as you have it in by Thanksgiving, then we'll make sure you have that your financial aid package ready to go when we start sending out those financial aid packages in that first mailing. But before you get started, you do need to have your FSA ID. You'll need one for the student and one for at least one parent. Both parents don't need to have them, just one. Both can if they would like to, but you really just need one to sign off on the FAFSA. You can go to studentaid.gov/FSA-ID in order to create your FSA IDs. Be sure when you're doing this to use separate email addresses, one for the student and one for the parent. You can't use the same one or else it will mess things up. So the FAFSA on the web worksheet, this is really just a guide for the questions are going to be asked when you're actually in the FAFSA, although what I'm showing you here is paper, and that, we can send that around. You will actually complete the FAFSA online. It's all electronic, so that everything gets processed in a more timely manner. But you will, again, if you're a current senior, you'll be completing the 22-23 FAFSA. If you are a junior right now, you won't be completing the FAFSA until next year, and that'll be the 23-24 FAFSA. But when you go into the FAFSA, again, you log in with your FSA ID that you created, or you create it when you're in there. Either one is fine. Just keep in mind, this is the student's FAFSA. So it's going to start with the student information. It's going to ask, for basic information, social security number, date of birth, first name, last name, those types of things. And then it's going to ask for, is the student a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen? Only U.S. citizens or eligible non-citizens, like a permanent resident, are able to apply for financial aid, for federal financial aid. So you have to put that information in, and then it's going to ask if the students, what their marital status is. And of course, for high school seniors, for the most part, you're going to be, I'm assuming, clicking the single button. If you are a non-traditional student, you can select one of the other options as well. So then student information, continuing on with this, they used to ask questions about selective service. They still actually ask the question for this year, but it is no longer required for a student to be registered in order to receive federal aid. So although the student will still be asked, it is not going to hold up any financial aid that they might be eligible for. It's going to ask some questions about the highest school that the parents have completed. Please note that it's parent 1 and parent 2. It's no more mother, father, parent 1, parent 2. Just be careful as you're going through to make sure that you're being consistent with what information you report for parent 1 and which one you report for parent 2. It's then going to ask some questions for the student about in order to determine what their dependency status is. So if the student can say yes to any one of the questions listed on the screen here, then they would be considered an independent student. If they say no to any of those questions, then they are considered a dependent student and they need to provide their parental information. If anyone can say yes to one of these questions as they're filling it out for the dependency status, just know that the schools you're applying to might ask for additional documentation, just so to back up those, to make sure that that information was checked off correctly. The biggest one that we find is that students will check off saying that they are in legal guardianship when in fact they might not be, or maybe they're in custody and not legal guardianship. And there will be additional documentation that the students will have to provide if that is the case. So just keep that in mind, that if you do fall into one of these categories on the screen here, that the schools you're applying to might ask for some additional information. So if you say no to, those questions, which again, most students in high school typically will, you then go on to reporting parent information. And one of the questions I get asked a lot is, okay, well, which parent do I actually report? So if your parents are married or unmarried but living together, you're going to report both of their income information and both of their, just normal information on the FAFSA. This also includes if parents are remarried. So let's say your parents are divorced. Your, parent one, mom gets married, remarried to now have a stepdad. You have to report mom and stepdad's information on the FAFSA. You wouldn't report bio dad, just mom and stepdad. Now, if your parents are divorced and not remarried, or if they are married, but your parents are divorced, you would report the parent who you spend the most or more than 50% of the time with during the prior 12 months. Now there's 365 days in a year, so there really can't be exactly 50-50, but I know sometimes divorce agreements will, state that it's, half and half for, who the child resides with. If that's the case, then you would go with whoever provides the most financial support to the student. And this thing can include if the student's on that parent's health insurance, those types of things. So after you determine which parents are reported on the FAFSA, you then go ahead and, put in that information, again, date of birth, social security number, first, last name, and then they're going to start to be asked about some tax information. So if your parents filed taxes in the year 2020, again, this is for students who are currently seniors, they would have to respond to these questions. And then they would also have to put in their adjusted gross income. Go on to, how much wages were earned for parent one, how much for parent two in 2020. It's going to ask if anyone in the household received SSI, SNAP benefits, free reduced lunch, or, down below, then if, any child support was paid, any child support was received, if you had any like tax deferred pension payments that were gone into your account. Now, this is not the total of your 401k amount, but this is if you had anything from your, wages go towards it during the 2020 year, and that information would be on your W-2 form. Now you go through all those questions. There's a lot of skip logic involved, so you might not have to answer all of these. And then it might get to a part where your parents might be asked about asset information. Again, not everyone will be asked about this. It kind of just depends upon all the information you put in previously, but they are asked about. And what would have to be provided would be information that is based upon this current year, pretty much as of you're filling out the FAFSA. Remember, tax information is going based upon 2020, so almost 2 years ago. But asset questions are based upon what's, in the accounts as of today, right now, as you're filling out the FAFSA. So it'd be cash or savings and checking accounts, net worth of other investments, if you like stocks or bonds, again, not your total 401k amount, but stocks and bonds of other things. If you have a business, investment firms, net worth of those types of things. I did get a question before about like if your house, the home that you live in is not considered, you wouldn't put that as an asset. If you do have a second home, like a vacation home or a rental or something, that would be included. You'd have to determine what the net worth of that is. After you finish with the parents' questions, it's going to take you right back to the next student section. And this is really asking all the same questions the parents were asked, but now just geared towards the student. So did the student file taxes in 2020? What was their adjusted gross income? What were their earnings? Again, did the student receive SSI or SNAP or free reduced lunch? And, can the student say yes to any of these questions as well? Child support paid, child support received. Most times high school students can't say yes to any of these, but every now and then there might be something that they can say yes to. And again, it might ask for the student's assets as well, but might not, just depends upon how you answered the questions earlier. So now that you got all that, you would actually go to studentaid.gov to actually complete the FAFSA. The actual website is up here, studentaid.gov/aid/apply for aid FAFSA. But if you just go directly to studentaid.gov, you'll find where you can under apply for aid, and you can either start the process or log back in if you've already completed a FAFSA in the past. Click on one of those buttons. It's going to say, okay, are you the student? Are you the parent or a preparer? It's really just the questions are going to be the same. It's just how they're presented depending upon what selection you pick here. Now, I talked about the tax information a couple slides ago, but one thing to keep in mind is that you will have the option to use the IRS data retrieval tool. What this does is that it takes the tax information directly from the IRS and puts it into your FAFSA form. So whether it's for parent or for student, this is an option as long as you file taxes. There's a few caveats for not being able to use it. I know if you are like married filing separate, it won't work for that, but it should work for most other cases, other instances. It's available to use as soon as the FAFSA opens on October 1st. So again, just a little bit away, it will be open. You can start completing the FAFSA and using the data retrieval tool. And we do highly recommend using the data retrieval tool when completing the FAFSA because this will allow the correct information to be imported over and really cuts down on the follow-up that schools might have to do with you when requesting some additional documentation. After you complete the FAFSA, the student will be emailed a student aid report. This is a copy from 21-22. I don't have the 22-23 one yet, but it looks very similar. It's actually just a summary of all the information you put into the FAFSA. It will give you a couple new numbers you might not have seen before. The data release number, the DRN number, it's a 4-digit number. This is just a number that actually allows you to give to schools so that they can maybe add themselves to the FAFSA if their school wasn't listed. And then the expected family contribution, or the EFC, is what all schools use to put together financial packages for students. And we'll get to that in a little bit. So while you're in the FAFSA, you can actually, as you're submitting it, you can list up to 10 schools on it. If you need to add more than 10, that's perfectly fine. But what you'll have to do is you'll have to add those first 10, wait about a week for everything to process, go back in, take some off, put some on, and submit it again as a correction. Not a problem doing that. Just be careful though, that you're keeping track of what schools you take off and which ones you put on, because if you end up taking off a school that you end up attending later on, they're no longer going to be on that FAFSA to receive any updates. So make sure that you go back and keep track of everything as you go along in the process. After you hit submit, it'll take, about 3 to 5 business days for it to process from the federal processor. Then it will be sent electronically to all the schools you listed on the FAFSA. Once those schools receive it, they will they'll first off wait to make sure that you're an accepted student, put that together with your FAFSA and start working on financial aid packages. You'll see a range of when you receive financial aid award letters or offers that are sent out. Some schools will start sending out in November, maybe December, but I think you'll probably see the bulk between the January and February going out. Again, depends upon when you actually complete the FAFSA form and when you're accepted by the school. Here at Niagara, we do start sending ours out right after the Christmas break in January. But again, you could see that wide range of schools. So don't be freaked out or paranoid if you get one from one school but not another. Check with their financial aid department, see when they start sending out award letters, just so that you're in the loop of all that. All right, so now that I've gone over the basic questions for the FAFSA, if you do have any questions as you go along, feel free to reach out to Niagara's financial aid office or the other financial aid offices that your student might, of the schools your student is thinking of attending, and ask those questions. We are here to help with whatever might come up. Now, what I want to go over now is kind of a breakdown of some of the different terms and phrases you're going to hear as you go along with financial aid, and just so you have a better understanding of what these things mean. So first off is your cost of attendance, or the COA. And what this is that it's comprised of direct costs, meaning those things that are charged directly to you, tuition, fees, room and board if you're living on campus, books maybe, and indirect costs. So room and board if you're not living on campus, if you're a commuter, transportation costs, personal costs, things that you're going to have throughout your year, the school year, but not something that the school is actually charging you on your account for. So those two things combine to make the cost of attendance, and this can vary widely from college to college because, of course, each college has different costs. Then you have the expected family contribution, or the EFC, and we did talk about this a little earlier when we were talking about the STAR report, the student aid report. So the EFC is the amount a family can reasonably be expected to contribute, and it's based upon all the information you put into the FAFSA. It takes into account, again, all income information, asset information. It's going to take into account how many are in the household, how many are in college. It does stay the same regardless of college. It has a parent component and a student component, again, based upon the information you provided. Now, something to keep in mind, though, is that just because, let's say, you might have a 0 EFC, does not necessarily mean that that is what your balance is going to be at those schools. It might be true for some schools. Maybe if you're going to a community school or a state school and you have, Pell Grants and TAP grants that cover most everything. But for private schools, most likely you are still going to have some type of remaining balance that would be outstanding. The EFC is really just a standard way for schools to be able to put together financial aid packages for students. Then we have financial needs. So you then take your cost of attendance, we reduce away your EFC from your FAFSA, and the remaining number is your financial need. And what this means is that we can package you with financial or need-based aid up to that amount. And need-based aid is based upon, again, all the results from the FAFSA and some of the federal programs and state programs. So you then have the different types of financial aid. There's 4 main categories. You have your scholarships or grants. That's free money, of course. You always want to take that, accept those first. Then you have your loans. These are going to be typically federal loans through the government, and this would be, your application for those is technically really the student's FAFSA form. There's Parent Plus loans, which are also federal loans, but you have to do an extra application for that to get approved or denied potentially. There's private loans that would be, in the student's name, but they need a cosigner. Those are through, not typically through the university, and it's not through the government. It would be through, like Sallie Mae or Wells Fargo or, something like a credit union, something like that. And then employment. So this is typically whether it's maybe work study on campus or some other type of student employment. Student works, some hours each week, 10 to 12 here at Niagara. Each school might be different. They can choose to get a paycheck or, have some that go towards their bill as well. So those are the 4 main categories of financial aid that you'll see within financial aid packages. So sources of financial aid that supply those 4, largest sources, federal government. Again, you have to complete the FAFSA form every year in order for students to be determined what federal aid they might be eligible for. You have the states, so if you're a New York State resident attending a New York State school, you might be eligible for either the tuition assistance program through New York State that is based upon income levels, or there's some merit scholarships through New York State as well. And they have a separate application. You can actually, when you're completing the FAFSA form, there's a section at the very, after you hit submit, it says, would you like to transfer your information over to your state application? I recommend saying yes. It's one less thing you have to do. It transfers that information over. You have to input some things, but it transfers most of the data over, and you can submit your state application that way as well. So highly recommend you do that when you finish the FAFSA. Private sources, kind of goes along with civic organizations and churches and employers. If you have, you work at Wegmans and they give a scholarship, or the Community Foundation of Greater Buffalo, there's a lot of different scholarships out there that you can apply for. So pretty much, any one of those things that doesn't come from the federal government or from the states or from the institution themselves would be considered a private source. So the federal government, it is the largest source of financial aid, again, based upon the FAFSA form, and it is most of their aid is awarded primarily on the basis of financial need, which we talked about a couple of slides ago. Some of the programs you might run into, the largest one is the Pell Grant. That's based upon what your EFC is currently. The Teach Grant, if you're thinking of going into the education field, the Opportunity Grant Program, Work Study. Now, those are grants and scholarships. Now, of course, work study would be, you have to work on campus or somewhere off campus to earn the award. And then the loans I talked about, the federal loans. So you have the subsidized and unsubsidized. These are loans in the student's name they would have to pay back after graduation. Again, the FAFSA form is their application for those. And then you have the PLUS loans, which are, again, federal loans in the parent's name that you can pay back after graduation, but it is something that would always be in the parent's name. And typically, parents will take those out to help pay some of the remaining balance. So the states, as I said before, for New York State, you have to be a resident of New York State, attending a New York State school. They have both merit and need-based scholarships. It does use information from the FAFSA. Again, try to complete the application as soon as you complete your FAFSA form as well. Private sources, like I mentioned before, foundations, businesses, schools, high school might have some specific scholarships that they might give out, charitable charitable organizations. Typically, a lot of these are, start coming out in, winter, early spring, and they are really due, typically March or April, sometimes May. These applications would be due. So it's a good idea to start researching these things now to kind of get a handle of what might be out there, and then start applying as soon as those applications do open up. A couple more things I wanted to mention before we wrap up. So I get asked a lot, okay, we fill out the FAFSA and it's based upon, pretty much 2 years ago information at this point. Our income has changed, especially during COVID, income might be different, or maybe there was a divorce or separation or something along those lines. So if any of those things has now occurred, you still need to complete the FAFSA using the 2020 income information, but then you need to contact the schools that you're really interested in and ask them and see if they explain the situation and see if they are able to do what we would call professional judgment or special circumstances, where we would open up, typically, each school is different, but here in Niagara, we would open up something in the student's portal, their financial aid portal. You'd have to complete the form, upload documentation, whether it's a job loss or, separation or whatnot, whatever it might be. And then we would see if we're able to adjust the FAFSA at all and reduce the financial contribution and increase the financial aid package. And then sometimes everything's the same, nothing has changed from what's on the FAFSA, but you just know that you might need some additional funding, and that's totally fine. Feel free to reach out, to write up a letter, an email, send it to the financial aid office, maybe speak to them first, see what exactly their process is, and submit an appeal for looking for additional funds. The worst thing they can say is no, so it doesn't hurt to try, if that's something that you are looking for. The last thing I want to touch on is I have sent this around as well to the high school counselors, so this will probably be on your website to go along with this, but it's the very last page of the financial aid booklet. And what it does is it compares the different award letters and offers that you get. So you're going to start, as I said, between November and February, March, you're going to see those financial aid offers kind of rolling at different times. So once you start getting those, use this worksheet or something similar to really break everything down. What exactly the charges are at each school. Are you staying on campus? Are you commuting at that school? What is the aid that they offered you? What are the loans? And then it also continues on the second page, so do all that math, break it down, because really each school is different, and you really want to see what the exact, or it's close to the exact cost that it's going to be, because I have students and parents say, I got this $40,000 offer from this one school, and you guys only offered me $30,000. Okay, well, take a look at that breakdown for that other school, and they might have given you $40,000, but they cost $70,000, so you still owe $30,000, as compared to we offered you $30,000, but we only cost $40,000, so maybe you only owe $10,000. You really got to do that breakdown to really make sure it's apples to apples, to make sure you're comparing. And this also helps you in the appeals process as well. If there's a school that you really want to go to, but maybe another one offered you a little bit more financial aid, you can use that and say, hey, listen, this is what the other school offered me. Is there anything else we can do? So it is an option that's out there. But I really do encourage students and parents to really sit down and go through this worksheet as you start getting those financial aid offers in. All right, well, that sums it up for me. Again, we are here to help, so please feel free to contact us, whether or not you're attending NAGA or not. We'll do our best to help you if it's a non-NU specific question. We're here to help. And not just my financial aid office. Financial aid offices at all the schools that you're applying to are there to help answer questions about the FAFSA, or if you have specific questions about their school or their financial aid packages. Our contact information is on the screen if you want to give us a call. My email is there, or our FAO@niagara.edu email. That's our general email. And we monitor that all the time as well. So please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, or reach out to your high school counselors, and they'll get in contact with me, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Have a good night.